Hello and welcome to the Digital Well Publisher podcast. My name is Helana Black. I'm excited to bring you yet another episode where today we're talking about leadership lessons that I am taking from some of the global tech giants in the world today. People like Mark Zuckerberg and the people who run places like Airbnb, YouTube, so on and so forth. And today we're talking about how leaders like you can respond to political news and other issues of controversy within your business. How can you do that? A lot of the times we get told that we should sort of shy away from issues of controversy, politics, religion, so on and so forth, because it could really bring some sort of a divide that may not be necessary. But what I have been learning from some of these global tech giants is that sometimes you need to be able to just move forward and say what you need to say and stand your ground in order to make a change that you want to be able to make in the world. And that is really what leadership is about. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into it. So TechCrunch, the magazine, recently published a roundup of statements from global tech giants that were condemning U.S. public policy leading to families separated at the border. And of course, these responses were published as expert interviews in national newspapers, formal statements on corporate blogs, and of course, the 280 character long tweets on Twitter. And so consumers have come to expect that the more well-known entrepreneurial tech leaders of the world, like Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg and Brian Cheskys of Airbnb, to take a stand on issues of moral concern, particularly when the issue directly involves their company. Zuckerberg, if you remember, recently came under fire after a voter targeting firm utilized private data from about 50 million Facebook users without their consent. You may also recall how Cheskys' creation of an anti-bias policy, this was back in 2016, after receiving complaints from Black travelers who experienced racism while choosing an Airbnb host. But now, how do we as entrepreneurs, as leaders, as experts, how do we respond to political issues that don't necessarily involve us directly, but rather force us to question our morals? And as I was saying in the beginning, business networking and consumer sales best practices tell us to shy away from politics, religion, and other controversial issues that can create unnecessary divisions between employees and customers in particular. But how do you as a leader decide when it's appropriate for you to speak up? And so I just wanted let's take a look at this TechCrunch article and take a few hints from these global tech leaders. So the first thing that I learned was that it's important for you as a leader to stand on your company values and not on political debates. Now, according to Harvard Business Review, I saw that it's important for entrepreneurs to have a clear value statement that resonates with their consumers for purposes of brand recognition and relationship building. So, for example, if we take a tweet from Airbnb's CEO Cheskys, they're always talking about their values start with making people feel like they belong, the subject of belonging. So in particular, if we are talking about stopping people along the border between Mexico and the United States, and more importantly, separating families, putting children into I don't know what you would call them, detention centers, putting them in holding spaces where they're essentially ripped apart from their parents, while their parents are going through some sort of a process to be able to either accept them into the United States or somehow send them back. But it's a horrible process, and a lot of people are interested in seeing this particular process of seeing families torn apart at the border, because it's really having an effect on how children are reacting. Just think of it. If you were a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old child in a migrant family, you probably don't speak much English, if any at all. Your parents probably don't speak much English, if any at all. And all of a sudden, you're being separated and thrown into a space that you don't know. You don't know anyone there. You're told that you're not allowed to really to talk with anybody, and it's just a traumatic experience. So Cheskys sent out a tweet talking about how unjust this really was, and he really wanted to be able to share from his own perspective, using social media, that his point of that he really wanted to be able to change this. So this is what he said in his tweet. I'll just bring this up. It says, "Ripping children from the arms of their parents is heartless, cruel, immoral, and counter to the American values of belonging. The U.S. government needs to stop this injustice and reunite these families. We are a better country than this." So for Cheskys, belonging is not just an Airbnb value. It's an American ideal that should be honored by all. So we notice how he stays away, when I was reading that tweet, he stays away from condemning the president as a person and instead calls on the U.S. government to do what's right. Cheskys here, he's not afraid to talk about what he sees in the news and social media. Again, just quoting, he says, ripping children away from the arms of their parents. He's letting his followers know that belonging is more than just a boring value statement. It's really a value that stems from a personal, moral conviction to do what's right. And furthermore, Cheskys turned the tweet into an official statement by attaching, on Twitter you can attach an image. Well, he attached the image with the quote, and it's signed by his fellow co-founders, and it's stamped with an Airbnb logo. Okay, so as a leader, if you really want to be able to use social media and be able to get your statement out there as quickly as possible, but you may not necessarily have the space to be able to put out a long form official statement. It may not be necessary yet. Maybe they're working through it. I don't know. But at this particular time, just putting that tweet out there and letting people know where it is that you stand on this particular issue, I found to be very interesting. So, moving along, the next thing that I noticed that these global tech leaders were doing, we just got finished talking about Brian Cheskys of Airbnb. Let's move along to Susan. I hope I pronounced the woman's name correctly. Susan Wojcicki, the CEO of YouTube. And here I want to be able to talk about communicate using your personal social media account of choice. All of the people that I'm going to be mentioning in this particular podcast used their own they used their personal social media accounts. They didn't go through their company websites, and I thought that was really important. So communicate using your personal social media account of choice. In a world where social media is moving faster than official news outlets, entrepreneurs have to remember that there is no separation between you, the person, and your business. If you've ever been confused about whether to post on Twitter or elsewhere as yourself or your company, this piece of advice should make the decision easier for you. Now, Susan Wojcicki, CEO of YouTube, uses her personal Twitter account to point her followers to organizations that are working on the ground with migrant families. YouTube has a main Twitter account, and they also have several hub accounts that focus on different arms of YouTube. And so at the time of this particular podcast anyway, Wojcicki chooses to keep her political viewpoints on her personal Twitter account, while other YouTube accounts focus on YouTube related projects. And she says in her tweet, regardless of your politics, it's heartbreaking to see what's happening to families at the border. Here are some ways you can help. And she gives a link to a particular article that made a list. So if people are interested in taking the issue a step further by getting personally involved, Wojcicki offers a place for you to be able to get access to that information immediately and take your own steps. Okay? So next up, we are talking about the CEO of Uber, Mr. Dara Khosrowshahi. I really hope I pronounce his name properly as well. We're talking about making your communication personal. How does this particular issue affect you as a human being? And also think about how does this also affect your employees as well as your customers. So Dara Khosrowshahi, CEO of Uber, takes a slightly different approach to his tweet by utilizing part of his personal story. And so let me pull up his tweet quickly here. He says, as a father, a citizen, and an immigrant myself, the stories coming from our border break my heart. Families are the backbone of society. A policy that pulls them apart rather than building them up is immoral and just plain wrong. Hashtag keep families together. So Khosrowshahi of Uber is more than just a leader of a tech company. He says he's also responding as a father, a citizen, and an immigrant. So remember, we're talking about making your position personal, about you as a human being, not just a leader of a tech company. He links to a Washington Post story where the leading image is of a crying migrant child looking up at two adults. Now, the photo is actually taken at the child's eye level, and it seems that the two adults seem to be carrying on a conversation, and they seem completely unbothered by the crying toddler. And so it's not hard to see that this issue really hits home for this tech CEO. One more thing I wanted to note here is that your story as a leader, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, as an expert, or however it is that you identify, you may very well reflect. Your story may very well reflect that of your employees and your customers, and you're not sharing it with them. So not responding to issues such as this may alienate some of your employees, making it difficult for them to be productive. You may, perhaps you have employees who are immigrants, employees who are Latin American, and, they feel very strongly about this issue. Any human being would feel strongly about this issue, really. You don't have to be directly affected in order to feel like it's an important issue. But it's nice when you, as the leader of your own organization, can stand up and be able to take a stand and have those conversations. Even in something as simple as a tweet, to be able to let people know where it is that you stand. The same thing goes for your customers. Choosing to be proactive on your response to political and controversial issues reinforces your customers' loyalty to your brand. So rather than think that, if I were to speak out about this particular issue or particular topic or this political issue, that it's going to keep people away from your brand. If they have a problem with what your opinion is, then perhaps they weren't your customers to begin with. I always think that when you are more of yourself, you're inviting the right people to be able to come to you, and it just makes business a lot more interesting. It makes it a lot more fun. It makes it a lot more fulfilling. So thank you to Mr. Khosrowshahi, CEO of Uber, for making his statement and bringing his personal story to the forefront of why it is that this issue of breaking up migrant families is so personal to him. So next up, let's see, we're talking about focusing on actionable steps to solve the problem. Focus on actionable steps to solve the problem. Now we're looking at John Zimmer, co-founder of Lyft. This is the other transportation technology and transportation service that you can get as a mobile app. Mr. Zimmer we're looking at him as an example of taking appropriate action that also happens to promote the company's service. Zimmer used his personal Twitter account, to share how Lyft is offering free rides to those directly involved with organizations who are on the front lines of supporting migrant families in need. So let's just take a look at what he said in his tweet. He said, "We, as in Lyft, are taking action to help the families and children that are being unjustly separated at the border by offering Lyft relief rides to 12 organizations." And he lists a few of the organizations that Lyft is partnering with. And he also uses the hashtag Keep Families Together. So if you take the time now to review Zimmer's Twitter account, what you'll find is that this kind of community involvement at Lyft is really just business as usual. He makes it clear that he and Lyft as a default actively supports quality causes that celebrate the spirit of community. Talking about values here. Lyft is all about community. If you remember when there was the shooting in Las Vegas, and there were a few Lyft drivers who were out there, giving rides to people, to medical facilities, giving them rides home, getting people to where they needed to go, and just that it's very clear that one of the values that John Zimmer, but not just John Zimmer, but Lyft as a whole, really values the spirit of community. It's not just a place for you to just, pay for a ride to get from point A to point B. It really is a community. I also wanted to bring notice to Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg, where he made a donation to his preferred organizations out of his own pocket. And he also used his personal Facebook account, to be able to ask others in the Facebook community to follow suit. So you can go onto his posts and directly click and make a donation, just as he had done. Okay. So next, This is one thing that a lot of people don't think about, is that when you start talking about where you stand on political issues or issues of controversy, you also create opportunities for you to attract top talent by putting your values in motion. Now, all of these tech leaders demonstrate that your company values should never be reduced to a cold statement buried in your website. We've all seen these old websites where they say we value X, Y, and Z, and we never hear another thing about it. But in this day of content marketing and social media, every day is a new opportunity for you to be able to demonstrate what your values are. And it's important for you as a leader to be able to take advantage of that. So your company value statement should really be a living, breathing document, exercised daily and captured in various forms of social media for all to see. And not only is it good for business, but it can also attract top talent. So the organization SHRM, I think it's the Society for Human Resource Management. They cite a study that says that your values are a permanent part of your company culture, a plus when it comes to attracting new employees. This finding is a departure from past studies that placed company benefits as the primary reason why job seekers flock to a particular company. Millennials in particular are looking for a company they can feel good about working at. So again, don't be afraid to take a stand on issues. It really makes the most sense for you to address directly. And that's all that I have for you today. I hope that gave you some things to be able to think about, rather than shy away from issues of political news or just issues of controversy altogether. Really think about whether or not it makes sense for you, both you as a human being, you as a leader, but also as the leader of a company, to be able to speak out when you see these controversial issues happening, and just to be able to get your opinion out there and to be able to let people know where you stand on these issues. So many benefits for you to be able to do that. Not just because it's good for business, as in making money, but it's just good to be a good citizen. And to be able to let people know how it is that you operate in the world. All right. So my name is Helana Black. You can connect with me at digitalwellpublisher.com. If you would like to connect with me so that we can talk about creating content for leaders that will help you communicate the magic of your brilliant ideas, I'd be more than happy to talk with you. I do content strategy. I do business book ghostwriting. I do developmental editing, as well as speak at conference events. If you would like to connect, you can email me at hello, HELLO, at digitalwellpublisher.com. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a great day.